Welcome to the Fear and Greed Business News Afternoon Report for Wednesday, the 17th of July, 2024. I'm Sean Aylmer. Every afternoon, we've got the 5 stories that happened today that you need to know about. Story number 1, the S&P ASX 200 closed up 0.7% today to a new closing high of 8,058 points. It followed strong gains on Wall Street overnight. About 80% of the top 200 stocks finished higher, with strong performances from Macquarie Group, which was up more than 2%, as well as Telstra, Woolies and National Australia Bank. James Hardie jumped more than 6%, building on gains earlier in the week. Hardie's is very exposed to the US economy, and lower rates should help earnings at the building products group. Gold stocks did well as the price of the precious metal rose. West African Resources and Bellevue Gold were both higher. Property stocks continued their recent good run, with Goodman Centre and Charter Hall showing the way. Property companies are highly leveraged, so hopes that rates will fall and therefore reduce interest rate payments is good for the sector. The REIT index is now up more than 7% over the past week. The tech stocks also did well today, led by WiseTech. The big miners were among the worst performers. Story number 2, Wall Street keeps running, with a broad-based S&P 500 rising overnight, while the Dow Jones Industrial Average, which measures 30 of the largest companies in the US, hitting a new record. Small caps are also doing well, with the Russell 2000 rising for 5 days straight. That's its longest run since April 2000. The S&P 500 is now up 20% this year. Not bad. Spurring on the confidence are hopes of a rate cut in coming months, and a growing belief that Donald Trump will win the November presidency poll. One of Mr. Trump's signature policies is to cut corporate taxes, which should bolster earnings. Gold's also on a tear, hitting a new peak of US $2,469.66 an ounce. US bond yields have fallen, reflecting those expectations of lower interest rates. Bitcoin's higher, worth just under $66,000 a unit, and the Aussie dollar's buying 67.3 US cents. Story number 3, Australia has quietly become a food superpower over the past decade, as local farmers have increased their output by more than 90%. According to billionaire paper, packaging and recycling magnate Anthony Pratt. The Australian food production industry now represents 6% of Australia's gross domestic product. Over the past 10 years, 1,200 food factories have been built across the nation, and food exports have more than doubled from $29 billion to $59 billion, he said. Mr. Pratt was speaking at the Australians at Global Food Forum. He said, notably, beef exports to China over the period have grown by 200%. He highlighted that Australia has secured 11 new free trade agreements in recent years, including the landmark Australia-India Free Trade Agreement that came into effect in December 2022. In total, we now have 18 FTAs in place. This has helped diversify the nation's food export market. Story number 4, BHP sold record amounts of Australian iron ore over the past year, but copper is where growth is likely to come from this year. Copper production was 9% higher in the 2024 financial year thanks to the Oz Minerals acquisition. It's forecast to rise by as much as 10% in the year ahead. BHP said its Escondida mine in Chile will soon begin producing higher grade material. BHP has been focused on building its copper assets, as demonstrated by its failed attempt to buy Anglo American earlier in the year. Demand for copper is expected to surge alongside electrification. Now, BHP also said it sold 287.7 million tonnes of Australian iron ore last financial year, an increase of 3% on the previous financial year and well ahead of the previous record set back in 2022. BHP's share price was down nearly 1% today. It's off 15% this year. And story number 5, investment banking is back, with Wall Street posting its best quarter for the sector in more than 2 years, in what bankers said was the early innings of a sustained recovery. The 5 largest investment banks, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan Chase, Morgan Stanley, Bank of America and Citigroup, together reported investment banking fees of $8.2 billion in the second quarter, a 40% increase from a year earlier and the highest since the start of 2022. All of the banks, except Goldman's, announced higher than expected investment banking revenues for the quarter. Each of the big 5 investment banks has outperformed the benchmark S&P 500 index over the past 3 months. That's it for the afternoon report for Wednesday, the 17th of July, 2024. Julian King and I will be back tomorrow morning with the Thursday edition of Fear and Greed Business News. I'm Sean Aylmer. Enjoy your evening.